The night the cameras found him, Darius Cole stood beneath a chandelier of blown glass constellations, the only stars he'd chased since childhood. 36, a black CEO who built engines of possibility out of late bills and sleep-starved code. He'd come to the Asterian Museum Gala to bid on a scholarship lot. Then the remark cut the air. "Vendors use the service entrance," said by Liana Remington, name like a dynasty, smile like a magazine cover. Phones rose, time slowed. Darius exhaled, choosing dignity over humiliation. What no one knew, by sunrise, an heiress would pull back $3 billion, and everything would change. Before we begin, take a moment and comment your city below. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from around the world. Now, let's dive in. The Asterian Museum's atrium looked like a galaxy had been poured into a glass bowl. Crystalline loops spun in the air. White tuxedo jackets flowed like comets. The jazz quartet held the room's pulse in a silver bowl of symbols. Darius Cole could read a room faster than a term sheet, but that night, he let himself look up. He'd promised himself moments like this, seconds to breathe before the next deal, the next fire, the next headline. He wasn't on a power hunt, or even a fundraiser. He'd come because the Gala's silent auction financed the Asterian Scholars, a program that sent kids from neighborhoods like the one that raised him to summer conservatories and labs. His mother had once ironed scrubs at midnight so she could stretch her nurse's salary. He had been the kid taking apart a used modem to build a router. The scholarship would have changed the slope of his learning curve. It would for someone else. A tray passed, miniature oyster towers under domes of smoke. He lifted the dome, laughed in surprise like a kid, and set it back. When he turned, she was there. Liana Remington. Headlines wrapped around her the way a dress did, effortlessly. Daughter of Victor Remington, the architect of a Fortune 50 holding company, board member of the family foundation, rumored to have a say, even if her say echoed in gilded rooms that sometimes pretended not to hear her. She glanced at his lapel pin, a matte onyx square with the letters FS, Meridian Freight Systems. Her eyes flicked to the servers and back to him, the mental math quick and private. "Vendors use the service entrance," she said, too lightly, as if tagging a moment in a rush. Phones, eager, hungry, rose. The quartet's brushwork seemed to stop. The air tasted like the moment before rain. Darius could have told her he wore this face into rooms where he was the only one. He could have said what his mother taught him about swallowing fire and making light with it. Instead, he took a breath that steadied the floor. "I'm here to bid on the scholarship lot," he said, voice low, steady. "But I do know the service entrance. My uncle used to work security here. He met Basquiat once by that door." A murmur. Someone lowered a camera. Someone else didn't. Liana's smile tilted, the facade cracking like sugar. For a beat, he saw the person under it, startled, not cruel. But the internet didn't speak in beats. It spoke in clips. He could feel it beginning. The spin, the headline, the algorithm's gasoline. He lifted his glass in a half-toast. "Enjoy your evening, Ms. Remington." He walked away, not because he was wounded, he knew wounds, but because leaving was his way to choose where his dignity lived. Behind him, whispers braided into rope. Before him, the scholarship display glowed under a soft pool of light. He wrote down a number larger than he should have. It felt like gravity, like declaring a thing true. By midnight, the clip had 20,000 views. By 2, 1 million. And somewhere past 3, in a townhouse with windows that didn't open, an heiress stared at the ceiling and began to plan an undoing that would split a boardroom in half and move $3 billion like a chess piece dragged across a continent. Darius didn't sleep much on good nights, and on bad nights he treated the hours like capital, spent carefully, invested in leverage. He was awake by 5 at his apartment in Brooklyn, blinds still black with Manhattan's shadow. He laced his running shoes and ran the promenade until the skyline bled a soft purple. Every step shelved the previous hour's rage and replaced it with breath. Back home, coffee in a heavy mug, he flipped open the old cedar cigar box on his bookshelf. It held strange reliquaries, a cracked Ethernet coupler, a bus pass, a Polaroid of him grinning at a community center server rack, his mother's handwritten grocery list. On top, the watch that had been his father's, a trumpet player with a day job at a port. The watch didn't keep perfect time. Neither had his life. At Meridian Freight Systems, his rival CEOs called him the poet. Not kindly. He had built MFS from a warehouse in Newark into an AI-driven logistics company that made last-mile deliveries both faster and less extractive. He bet on people, warehouse workers with ideas, coders from boot camps, veterans who knew how to triage chaos. He paid for ESL classes and apprenticeships and let the system pay him back with loyalty and creativity, 2 currencies every spreadsheet undervalued. By 7:30 a.m., his COO, Luis Mendoza, texted, "You seeing this?" A link, the clip, rendered and memmed. Darius watched once, jaw ticking. He watched again to note the angles, the framing. He watched a 3rd time to practice forgiving it. His chief of staff, Priya Nandakumar, called, "We have inbound, journalists, community organizers, investors pretending to be journalists." "I won't be the outrage of the week," he said. "Not on cue." "I didn't think you would," Priya replied. "Your line? I'm not a symbol, I'm a person, and we've got a driver shortage on Route 9. Copy. Also your 9 a.m. with First Pilaster Bank? They moved it forward, 8:15, and—" She hesitated. "Rumor is they're selling our line of credit. Might be nothing. Might be Stonebridge. Stonebridge Logistics, run by Anton Cade, built profit by predation. Delightfully legal recipes of leverage and fire sale acquisitions." Darius's shoulders tightened. "Thanks. Find out who's whispering and why." Before he left, he dialed his mother, Corinne. She picked up on the 2nd ring, breath already worried. "You don't have to call me, baby. I saw. I prayed. You handled it." "I said 1 sentence, Ma." "That was the sentence God asked for today. The rest can come later." He smiled despite himself. "How's the ward?" 3 births before dawn. People push through." "Yeah," he said. "They do." At the elevator he met his neighbor, a retired math teacher who watered her plants with the devotion of a monk. "You're on the internet," she said, eyes bright, not unkind. "Be careful with it. It eats gratitude for breakfast." In the car, as his driver threaded the bridge, he pressed his palm to the window to feel the cold. The city was a ledger and a choir. He remembered the first time he signed a payroll check big enough to make his stomach lurch. He remembered telling a 19-year-old picker named Mateo that his idea saved the company 6 figures and handing him a bonus that paid for his sister's nursing school. Engines of possibility, he thought, not only code, people. At First Pilaster, the partners wore smiles shelved at the same angle, coffee cups that weighed too much. He took his seat, chest steady. He didn't know yet that elsewhere a door was opening for him, not with welcome, but with consequence. Liana Remington learned to ignore the soundless echo of very expensive rooms. It made a person believe their voice had nothing to bounce against, therefore nothing to mean. The townhouse on East 72nd had ceilings that thought they were philosophers. The windows were tall, the art was suggestive and discreet, and the oxygen carried faint notes of eucalyptus because a consultant learned that scent kept donors awake during long presentations. She lay on a couch whose designer had dictated how to lie on it, thumb pressed hard against the pulse in her wrist, as if pushing thought into order. The clip looped on her phone until she could mouth along with her own words. Vendors use the service entrance. Surgeon clean syllables. She felt sick. A knock. Malcolm Thorne, CEO of the Remington Foundation, entered with the hush of a man trained to disturb people without seeming to. "We have a plan," he said, with a tiny smile that meant there would be none. "We'll issue a statement. Ms. Remington regrets a misunderstanding and will be meeting with Mr. Cole to discuss supply chain equity. We'll convene a working group on philanthropic access. The internet will yawn by Wednesday." Liana sat up. Her stomach refused the corporate oatmeal of the recommendation. "I said something ugly because a part of me lives in a world designed to make ugly automatic," she said, voice thin from being unused. "I don't want a working group. I want to fix something real." Malcolm's smile stayed at the angle taught on executive retreats. "What would you like to fix?" he asked, only lightly patronizing. It was the tone men used on her since she was 19, and told a boardroom the data didn't support their favorite narrative. She had once thrown up in a linen napkin after a quarterly meeting and kept smiling. She had read about Darius Cole before the gala, an article about warehouse schooling and apprenticeships that made her click save and then never reopen. He wasn't a mascot for her shame. He was a case study in operating differently inside the same economic weather. "Our foundation is about to commit $3 billion to Remington Growth Fund 4, she said. "A significant portion targets distressed logistics assets." "That's correct," Malcolm said, neutral. "It will fund Stonebridge's roll-up," she said. At his blink, she added, "I read the appendices. It will extract, cut wages, strip pensions, and call it efficiency." "You know we value your curiosity," Malcolm said warmly, which meant stop. "But Victor and the board prefer I host and smile," she finished for him, then surprised herself by laughing, short and unpretty. "I may be good at that, but I'm tired of being a chandelier, Malcolm. I want to be a breaker switch." He shifted. "Even if you could retract the commitment, hypothetically, it would signal instability. There could be legal implications." "Hypothetically," she said, "what if instability saves something?" He looked at her as at a horse remembered too late to be wild. "We'll meet at 11, he said. "I'll bring Victor. I suggest you rest." When he left, Liana searched for Darius's email and typed 3 words that cost more than the dress she'd worn. "I'm deeply sorry." She deleted them. It sounded like a PR intern in her head. Instead, she found a phone number embedded in a pitch deck he once sent a Remington venture arm. She texted, "I messed up. I'd like to apologize to you directly. Coffee, anywhere, my scheduling hell be damned." She added, "No press, just people." She didn't know if he'd respond. She didn't deserve it. The thought made her breathe more honestly than she had in years. At 11, in a conference room on the 53rd floor, her father's cufflinks flashed gold as he tapped the table. "We'll clean this up," he said, as if wiping a spill. "We'll announce the fund next week as planned. You'll cut a ribbon. Wear blue. Investors like blue." "Dad," she said, "we can change the plan." "That plan pays for your blue," he answered without heat. Liana looked out at a city that performed not knowing it was being watched. She thought of a service entrance. She thought of doors. She thought of different ways to open them. When her phone vibrated, she glanced down. A text. "No coffee? Walk. Pier 2. 1 hour." It was from Darius. She stood. "I have to go," she said to the room that had talked at her since childhood, to listen. The wind on Pier 2 carried the smell of river and gasoline. Joggers moved like metronomes, and a woman in a red coat taught a beagle to sit. Darius stood at the edge, hands in the pockets of a jacket he wore when he needed a reminder of ordinary weather. He didn't know why he'd said yes. Maybe because the morning had already cut him open, and this felt like either salt or medicine, and he wanted to know which. Liana approached without assistance, which surprised him. She wore a plain black coat and shoes that looked wrong for a pier. She stopped a few feet away. "I'm sorry," she said, voice traveling past practiced armor. No hedge, no lesson, just sorry. He didn't nod to make it easy. You said what the room had taught you to say, he replied. That doesn't excuse it. It explains it. He watched the beagle finally sit, proud as a prince. You texted. That matters more than your PR statement. The PR statement made me feel like a laminated apology, she said, and a ridiculous laugh caught on the word laminated. I don't want to laminate anything. I want to pull out the staples. He considered her. What are you really here for? To ask you to tell me what I don't see, she said, and to tell you something you don't know. She swallowed. Remington Growth Fund FU plans to acquire your lender's logistics portfolio. If that happens, Stonebridge, Anton Cade, will influence your line of credit. He's been angling to call it and pressure a sale. I learned this yesterday. The pledge our foundation commits, $3 billion, tips the balance. Darius stared at the water, which pretended to be calm. Priya's rumor hammered between his ribs. You came to warn me? I came to undo what I am complicit in, she said. If I can. You can't flip a switch, he said reflexively. That's not how capital moves. She smiled with one half of her mouth, as if briefly remembering a dare. You'd be surprised how many switches exist when you inherit a substation. He didn't smile back. Even if you could, you're risking a war with Victor and a network that thinks it is the sky. Then I will learn to love the weather, she said. And for the first time he saw something steely that wasn't cruelty, something untrained and therefore trustworthy. But I won't do it to save your company. That's your work. I'll do it to stop financing violence with a polite name. He looked at her then, fully, weighing whether to let her into a story that already had too many narrators. If you move the money, he said slowly, do it openly. Don't make it about me. Make it about governance and impact and worker voice, and... He held up a finger. No savior angles, no white paper that turns warehouses into watercolor. She nodded, the sharp nod of someone relieved to be given constraints. Teach me then, she said simply. Not to improve me, to improve the move. He should have walked. Instead, he told her what his staff had told him. Set covenants that reward retention, link interest rates to wage floors, require board seats for community credit unions, publish supplier payments, enforce safety metrics with the same energy you enforce EBITDA. He watched her thumb race across her phone like a student taking notes before a test that finally mattered. I don't need your forgiveness, she said when he finished, but I'll take your homework. Homework is how you learn the shape of your mind, he said, half to himself. Her phone buzzed again. Victor. She silenced it, eyes briefly closing. When she opened them, there was a decision in their brown. Tonight, she said. I'll do it tonight. Do what, precisely? He asked, cautious. Pull back $3 billion, she said, as if naming a grocery item, and reallocate it. He laughed, shocked. Overnight? I've lived my life under emergency, she said. It's time to cause one for the right reason. They stood with the river between them and the city. Somewhere a siren wailed, a small hymn of urgency. He didn't know if he could trust her. He decided to trust the part of her that wanted to become someone she could live with. Then we're both going to be awake tonight, he said. Wealth moves at night to avoid witnesses. Liana knew this because she had grown up half asleep while signatures changed the architecture of other people's daylight. That evening she wore soft clothes like armor and paced under a painting worth a row of brownstones, waiting for signatures that could turn a theory into friction. The Remington Foundation's investment committee convened on emergency call. Malcolm Thorne spoke with the smile voice that calms donors and hides knives. This is irregular, he said mildly, a preface to no. Our commitment to Growth Fund of 4 is a cornerstone. It's a cornerstone for demolition, Liana said, letting impatience bring her voice back from finishing school. I am reassigning our pledge to a new vehicle. You do not have the authority, Malcolm replied, warmer now. She had spent the afternoon reading trust documents like scripture. Section 7.3 grants the chair of the Philanthropy Council, me, discretion to redirect pledged capital when the investment undermines the foundation's charitable purpose. Exhibit C defines charitable purpose as public benefit, including labor welfare. She felt her heart bang like a drum line. Remington Growth Fund fees strategy actively undermines wages and pensions. I am invoking 7.3. You are misreading, Malcolm said. I am reading, she said simply. We've underread for years. Victor joined the call, voice gravel. You're making a scene, he said. Scenes show people what's in the room, she answered, surprising herself. Our new vehicle is the Community Supply Chain Resilience Fund, CSR, co-managed with the Atlantic Collegiate Credit Union Network and an HBCU consortium. It will provide patient capital to logistics firms that meet worker safety, wage, and transparency standards. It will purchase accounts receivable at humane rates for small trucking companies, stabilize docks with safety retrofits, and, she inhaled, offer a bridge facility to enterprises threatened by predatory roll-ups. Named enterprises? Victor asked, knife unsheathed. Criteria-based, she said, palms damp. If Meridian Freight qualifies, they can apply. So can their competitors. You're laundering your guilt through a balance sheet, Victor said, cool and merciless. Meanwhile, you compromise ours. I'm rebalancing, she said. We forgot that people are assets. The lawyers joined, and hours blurred into commas and clarifications. Midnight found Liana on a video conference with a credit union president in Atlanta, a labor economist in Detroit, and Dr. Amara Bentley, dean at Mid-Atlantic State University, who agreed to chair an independent oversight council. If we do this, Dr. Bentley said, we publish impact metrics quarterly and executive compensation annually. We're done with philanthropy that hides its own math. Done, Liana said. At 2:43 a.m. Eastern, she signed. The signature was boring. The effect was not. $3 billion turned around like a ship wrenching its rudder, and the phone lines on the 53rd floor lit up like a distress flare. By sunrise, Bloomberg's push alert popped on screens in coffee shops and loader cabs. Remington Foundation pulls 3B from Growth Fund FU, cites labor concerns, announces supply chain resilience vehicle. Analysts blinked. Anton Cade swore. Malcolm drafted statements that said nothing and did it beautifully. Darius, reading on the treadmill, squeezed the handles and laughed once, loud enough to make the person beside him glance over. He caught his breath and texted Priya. QSR fund just live. Criteria heavy. Better than charity. Meet at 9. He thought of Liana standing in the wind, saying she wanted to become a breaker switch. He had seen men flip countries with less sweat than she had used learning a clause number. He didn't romanticize it. He recognized atonement when he saw it. And atonement's best friend, accountability. At MFS headquarters in Newark, the day shift arrived under a sky the color of aluminum. The floor supervisor briefed them quick. New safety shields on the sorters, a trial run in Dock 4 to prevent pinch point injuries. The head of HR, a woman with a voice that made people straighten their spines, announced the apprenticeship cohort's graduation. Darius watched from the mezzanine, hands on the rail. Engines of possibility. He'd said it before. He believed it more now. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your grace last night made this possible. He stared. He typed, No, your will did. He deleted your will for once, because it was cruel, and he did not want cruelty to be his idiom. He sent, Meet me at the warehouse, no cameras. An hour later, Liana stepped out of a ride share in a coat that looked wrong under the fluorescent belly of dock lights. She tucked her hair under a hard hat and listened, really listened to a picker talk about tendinitis and to a driver talk about hours that turned into years. She picked up a scanner. She tried to lift. She failed well. She laughed with the woman who showed her a better grip. And something in her posture, the part that had always expected a spotlight, relaxed as if it had finally learned how to stand without one. When a system begins to reform, it squeals. Stonebridge issued a statement dripping with patient disappointment. Analysts tutted into microphones. An anonymous board member told a reporter the heiress had become emotional, the word men used when a woman's logic carried a moral charge. Lawsuit drafts multiplied like rabbits in the inboxes of lawyers who bill in 6-minute increments. At the warehouse, Darius and Liana walked the line with Luis. They watched rotating beacons flash when the pallet drones threaded too near a human. They paused at a board full of sticky notes, ideas from workers, rewards paid out at Friday lunches. Lower racks 2 inches, fewer ladder climbs. Gloves that fit small hands. Translate SOP into Spanish and Tagalog. The notes were simple. The returns were large. Liana reached for a sticky and then stopped her hand. "May I?" she asked the floor lead. "I don't want to take." "Take ideas?" The woman grinned. "We got more. That's the point." On a break room wall, a framed photograph showed a field trip. A dozen teenagers wearing safety vests 2 sizes too big, eyes bright like sparklers. Apprenticeship cohort 02. Next to it, a letter from a graduate now working IT at a hospital. "You told me I could fix things people touch. People now depend on me because you taught me to depend on myself. Tell Luis I still beat him at chess." Liana read it twice. "I thought my family was the only one with letters framed in hallways," she murmured. "Different handwriting," Darius said. They ended in a conference room with bad coffee that tasted better because someone had written "strong" on the pot with a Sharpie. Priya slid in, eyebrows a question mark. "CSR term sheet," she said, handing Darius a stapled packet. "Conservative but fair. No special sweetheart clauses for us. Luis will faint from the novelty." Liana sat across from them, hands folded like a student before an oral exam. "My lawyers will try to claw this back," she said. "They'll say I exceeded authority. They'll mean I exercised it beyond their comfort." "What do you need from me?" Darius asked. "Absolutely nothing," she said, "except the truth when it hits." He studied her. "What's the truth you're scared of?" "That I am a portrait and not a person," she said without flinch. "That everything I do is an accessory." "Then you're here to ruin your own portrait," he said gently. "Good art breaks its frame." Luis returned with 2 waters and a joke. Priya kept her attention on the terms. Work hummed through the walls like a kind of prayer. It should have felt transactional. It didn't. As they stood to leave, Liana paused by a window that looked over cranes lifting steel like knitting needles. "My grandfather bought docks like these and treated them like chess squares," she said, voice rough. "My father called that vision. I call it forgetting the pawns or people." "My father worked one," Darius said. "Dock 17, in Bayview. He played trumpet at a bar where the floor stuck to your shoes and the air smelled like fried miracles. He used to say the ship horns tuned him." "So there's a chorus in us," she said. They looked at each other in a moment that contained more than apology, and less than romance. That wide acreage where new kinds of trust grow. Then the moment broke, because Priya's phone buzzed and she swore softly. "The other shoe," she said. "First Pilaster just transferred our facility management to Stonebridge." "Effective when?" Darius asked. "End of quarter," she said, already dialing. "Cade's moving." Liana's jaw set. "He's testing whether I flinch." "Then don't," Darius said. "I won't," she said, and left as if the hallway were a fuse. That night, a clip emerged. The Gala moment from a different angle. Someone had filmed the 30 seconds before Liana spoke, when a Stonebridge PR man helpfully told her, quiet and quick, "The vendors are over there." He jerked his chin toward Darius. The cut made it look like it came from her eyes alone. The new version showed the whisper. It did not excuse her. It indicted someone else. The internet, drunk on its own righteousness, didn't know what to do with a nuance hangover. Some apologized. Some doubled down. Some shrugged and went to sleep. Darius watched without satisfaction. He texted the filmmaker, a museum sound tech, to say thanks. Then he did what mattered. He returned to his office and began assembling a defense against a line of credit being used like a garrote. He wouldn't ask the CSR fund to rescue him. He would prove he deserved to exist, and then ask for a term everyone else forgot to consider. Time. Anton Cade collected companies the way certain men collected watches, trophies that told time with other people's hours. He'd built Stonebridge by buying tired assets and sucking nutrition from bone. He wore friendliness like a well-cut suit and facts like cufflinks, utilitarian and replaceable. In his office, he watched the new clip with the attention he reserved for instability. The PR man's whisper, Liana's reflex, Darius's refusal to perform rage for the camera. Anton did not love surprises he hadn't paid for. He dialed a number that answered on the first ring. "You told her to say that?" he asked his head of communications, voice pleasant, the way a cat purrs at a bird. "I suggested she avoid vendors," the man said, sweaty across a phone line. "She's predictable." "She is not," Anton murmured, eyes on the CSR headlines. "Not anymore." He hung up and looked out at the city he preferred from above. He had planned to collect Meridian freight systems the way he collected industrial shelving companies. Corner the oxygen, wait for the gasp, offer relief with terms that became shackles. The Remington pledge had seemed like a wind at his back. Liana's reallocation changed the weather to cross breeze. He would not cede. In Newark, Darius convened his leadership. "Stonebridge moved our facility management," Priya said, map on a screen. "They'll call our covenants or engineer a technical breach. Then we show compliance with receipts," Darius said, "and we build an alternate runway. Customers with underpriced contracts get honest letters with modest increases and transparency on costs. We lose a few. We keep the ones who understand we aren't a cut-rate company pretending to be a miracle." Luis pointed to dock-level data. "If we improve picker routing by 3% and fix the cross-dock bottleneck in Bayview, we pick up 6 days runway this quarter. Also, Mateo's right about those latch sensors." "Bring him in," Darius said, "and get me Dr. Bentley. I want to know what the CSR oversight will require. We'll act like we already live there." He hadn't slept much. He didn't look like a man who hadn't slept. He looked like a man who had decided that whatever happened next would meet him with his back straight. Liana did not sleep either. She met with union reps who expected to dislike her, and instead found an heiress willing to take notes and be corrected. She met with a credit union loan officer who described payday loans as slow bleed, and with a single mother who drove a forklift and said she just wanted her wrists to work when her kid learned to braid hair. Liana stitched these into a document more radical than rhetoric, operating guidelines for CSR that bored most readers and quietly re-engineered power. Meanwhile, the Remington board prepared a vote of no confidence in her judgment. The language was careful. The intent wasn't. Her aunt, Eleanor Caldwell, vice chair, called to deliver a speech disguised as advice. "You've had your tantrum," Eleanor said. "Now behave." "This isn't rebellion," Liana said. "It's repair." "You can't repair what you don't understand," Eleanor replied. "Then watch me learn," Liana said, and hung up quickly so courage couldn't leak out through her feet. That afternoon, Darius's mother sat at her kitchen table and watched the new clip on a cracked iPad. She nodded once at the whisper. "Of course." When Darius called, she said, "People will try to make it a story about villains and angels. You stay human, that's harder." "I know," he said softly. "Ma, what if we lose?" "Do we stop caring if we lose?" she asked, gently brutal. "Never." "Then we won't lose what matters," she said. He closed his eyes and listened to her breathe, counting. The Remington annual meeting was a theater, velveted and lawyered. Shareholders filed in carrying tote bags designed to look sustainably expensive. The script called for Victor to be obeyed, Liana to be chastened, and a vote of no confidence to pass like a needle through silk. Scripts break. When Liana took the microphone, the air temperature seemed to drop. She wore a navy suit because investors trust blue, but under it she wore a shirt she'd bought at a thrift store when she was a grad student trying to hide in plain sight. She had a binder. It contained impact metrics, loan loss reserves, accident rates at acquired docks, and a statement signed by Dr. Bentley's Oversight Council. She had never felt more like herself. "Our foundation's purpose is public benefit," she began. "We confuse benefit with brand. A rustle, the polite kind." She continued. "Here are charts, numbers you can audit. Wages post-acquisition, down 9% within 18 months across Growth Fund 3's portfolio. Injury rates, up 4%. Pension obligations converted into cash settlements at pennies. If these are efficiencies, let's name them honestly. Taking bread from people's tables, then congratulating ourselves for eating fewer carbs." A hiss of laughter somewhere, quickly smothered. "We are excellent at reputations," Liana said. "I propose we become excellent at reality." Eleanor scowled. Victor leaned back, measuring. Liana took a breath. "I made an error at a gala," she said, looking up. "I said something that revealed how reflexes get trained by rooms like this. I apologized, yes. More importantly, I changed behavior we control. We can continue funding roll-ups that treat humans like inefficient code, or we can build systems where dignity compounds. The CSR fund isn't my project. It's a proposal that the word Remington can mean repair." She clicked, and the screen filled with a short video. A picker explaining how a new glove allowance saved her fingers. A driver describing patrol breaks that reduced fatigue. A credit union president, eyes fierce, saying, "We can finance safety as if it pays, because it does." It was not glossy, it was stubborn. When the vote came, the board attempted to strip her chair. What happened instead was chaos. A minority of activist shareholders, small funds, public employee pensions, and a coalition of community banks voted to keep her. It wasn't a victory, it was an opening. The no-confidence motion failed by 4%. The room did not know what to do without the comfort of inevitability. Meanwhile, Anton Cade sat 2 rows from the front, mouth smiling, eyes not. He walked out early, phone already to his ear. "Speed the covenant check," he told a lieutenant. "If they're 2 minutes late on receivables, call it." He forgot that people who have learned to breathe underwater don't often drown in puddles. Darius, who had declined to attend because he refused to become a prop, watched the vote numbers on a laptop in the break room as his team ate curry out of aluminum trays. He lifted a fork like a toast when the motion failed. "Back to work," he said, and meant it. That night, the Asterian Museum hosted a smaller event to announce a grant for tactile science exhibits. Liana went, hair pulled back as if she were trying to keep her brain in the front of her head. She looked at a display of meteorites and thought about force and atmosphere. Darius arrived late, in a gray suit that had learned his cadence. They ended up by the service entrance, because of course they did. They stood where a whisper had become a detonation. "You knew I wouldn't be a pawn," he said, gentle. "Good," she said. "I'm learning to play a different game." For a long moment, they didn't talk. The museum smells, stone and dust and childhood awe, did the talking. Then she said, quietly, "When I was 9, I wanted to be an architect. I built houses out of cereal boxes and insisted on setbacks and egress stairs. My father laughed and told me to stick to Galas. He didn't mean to hurt me. He gave me a world where I was a hostess. Tonight I decided to be a builder anyway." "Then build," he said. "And when you run out of cardboard, I'll bring you wood." He said it like an invitation and a promise that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with respect, which, they were both discovering, was what love needs to be native to a place. A storm season followed. Stonebridge sued the Remington Foundation for tortious interference. The Remington board countersued the Oversight Council, and a columnist wrote that Liana was the Joan of Arc of warehousing, which made her throw a newspaper in a trash can and then retrieve it because the paper could be recycled. Darius fought on his own front, renegotiated customer contracts, automated intelligently without amputating jobs, and moved a portion of warehousing to a worker-owned partner in Ohio that taught Wall Street a new math. CSR dispersed its first tranche. Meridian qualified along with 2 competitors, each held to the same covenants. Dr. Bentley sent auditors who brought clipboards and the kind of listening that disarms spin. The first quarterly report was published online for anyone to read. No glossy photos, just charts, notes, and a conspicuous sentence. We will tell you when we fail and why. The line didn't go viral. It went credible. Liana and Darius began to see each other without headlines attached. They met for noodles in a fluorescent-lit shop where nobody cared who they were. He introduced her to his grandmother, Etta, in Savannah, a woman with a laugh like a front porch and a mind like a ledger that kept track only of what mattered. Etta took Liana's hands and turned them over, palm up, as if checking for calluses of the spirit. "You got soft hands," she said kindly. "Life can soften or soften you. You decide which way." They walked the marsh at dusk. The horizon looked like a promise held horizontal. "Do you ever want to run away?" Liana asked. "Every Wednesday," Darius said, smiling. Then, more serious. "But I have people whose paychecks depend on my stubbornness. That's a covenant, too." She nodded. "I've been parented by an institution," she admitted. "It takes time to learn I'm not its child." "You're allowed to be both repairer and beginner," he said. "People pretend those are different jobs." When they kissed for the first time, it felt like a sentence they'd already been speaking, but only then punctuated. Neither of them felt rescued. Both felt recognized. "This," the kiss said. "This after everything, and because of it." They refused a magazine profile that wanted to call them power couple. They did not need to be made consumable. They kept their public work public, and their tenderness mostly private. When someone snapped a photo at a fundraiser, they smiled the way people do when they have nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Months tore off the calendar. Meridian posted a modest profit. Stonebridge failed to force a breach and moved on to easier prey. The Remington board attempted to sideline Liana by burying her in committees. She turned the committees into soil where seeds could grow. A year to the day after the gala, the Asterion hosted a new event titled Confluence, Art, Labor, and the City We Make. The keynote speaker was Dr. Bentley. The first panel was a forklift driver and a curator discussing ergonomics and sculpture. Liana introduced them and did not center herself. Darius sat in the third row, breathing like a man who finally found a tempo that matched his. When the lights dimmed, a film played, a montage of hands, sorting, soldering, signing. A voiceover said, "We are not the sum of our transactions. We are the sum of our vows." It sounded like a prayer and a ledger entry, and people wept as if they knew those could be the same thing. They met again under the blown glass constellations, which had not changed but seemed to. The room was less certain of its own importance, which made it better. Darius and Liana walked past the service entrance. Someone had posted a small sign there, unofficial but neat. "All entrances are for people." It had been taped up by a security guard on a quiet morning. No one had removed it. They found a quiet corner. "I can't believe it's been a year," Liana said. "Time moves like freight," Darius said. "Fast when you aren't looking, heavy when you are." "You taught me how to look," she said. "Not at headlines, at hands." "You taught me that some doors can be changed, not just opened," he said. They looked around at a room that once had felt like a verdict, and now felt like a venue. On stage, a former picker received a scholarship for her son. The jazz quartet played a tune that sounded suspiciously like the rhythm of forklifts and cranes. Someone auctioned a week of consulting hours to help small museums improve accessibility. It wasn't utopia. It was better. Progress. Etta had sent a text earlier. Remember who you are and who you're for. Don't let the flowers fool you. They're just plant confetti. He showed it to Liana, who laughed until she cried. Before they left, Liana stopped and looked up at the glass. I used to think these were just decorations, she said. Now I see a map, not of stars, of choices. We chart them, Darius said. Then we walk. They stepped outside into air a little wet with spring. Reporters tried for questions. They declined with kindness. A young woman approached, hesitant, phone in her hand. I wanted to say your story helped me renegotiate my hours, she told Liana, eyes bright with the relief of having asked for more and gotten some of it. My boss said budgets, but I said bones. Liana touched her shoulder lightly. Bones matter, she said, more than budgets. They crossed the street. Traffic hummed. The city was still a ledger and a choir, but they could hear the choir better now. You know we might lose things again, Liana said, not fearfully, but as a way of telling the truth. We will, Darius said, but we won't lose ourselves. He took her hand. Not as a headline, as a vow. Above them, the chandelier constellations burned through the museum glass, reflections of reflections. They had never been stars, but tonight they were accurate. Fragments of light held in a shape by intention. That was all a constellation ever was, a story we choose to tell together until it guides us home. If this story moved you, if Darius and Liana's leap from humiliation to humanity reminded you that money is loud, but authenticity is louder, don't let it end here. Hit like so more people see it, share it with a friend who's rebuilding after a public fall, and subscribe for more true-hearted tales about power, purpose, and love. Every click tells the algorithm that transformation matters. Every comment becomes a lantern for someone walking through their own difficult night. And if you take one thing with you, let it be this. Titles can be taken, fortunes can shift overnight, but the courage to show up as yourself, again and again, is a wealth no one can repossess. Keep going. Keep giving. Keep choosing the human being in front of you. I'll see you in the next story, where we keep turning spectacle into meaning and headlines into hope. Until then, breathe, believe, begin again.